somewhere in the endless expanse of space, where nebulae paint watercolor dreams across the cosmic canvas, there floats a structure that defies imagination. This is the story of Last Outpost Station, and how a single human managed to break every rule the galaxy held sacred. The ancient station rotates slowly against a backdrop of distant stars, its crystalline spires catching and refracting light in ways that make it appear alive. Each facet tells a story, each corridor holds a secret, and today, everything changes. Inspector Murgle's 3 eyes cycled through their morning calibration routine as he absorbed his nutrient paste through his primary feeding tentacle. 117 rotations on the job, and he'd thought he'd seen everything. The Orcs, with their barbaric customs, the Eldar who could bend reality with their cone-shaped heads, even the notorious gremlins who'd try to murder anyone who splashed water on them. But today's report made all 3 of his hearts stutter. "Computer," he chittered, his secondary mouth forming the universal translation sounds. "Replay first contact protocol recording for species designation, Terran." The holographic display flickered to life, showing a creature that appeared deceptively simple. Bipedal, mostly hairless except for an attractive yellow patch on top, 2 forward-facing predator eyes, and the strangest thing, a constant expression that Myelgo's species recognition software labeled as amusement. "Display origin coordinates," Myelgo commanded. The star map materialized, and there it was, the impossible truth that had dragged him from his rest cycle 4 hours early. The coordinates pointed deep into the muddle, that region of space that had driven countless civilizations insane, that had ended the mighty Precursor Empire, that had... A chime interrupted his thoughts. "Inspector," the station AI announced, "the Terran representative has arrived for their secondary screening." Myelgo's skin shifted to a deeper shade of purple. "Send them in." The door irised open with a soft hiss, and in walked the human. Myelgo corrected himself according to the protocol files, moved with a casual grace that seemed to ignore the station's slightly higher gravity. "Good morning, Inspector," the human said cheerfully. "Love what you've done with the place. Very sparkly." Myelgo's tentacles twitched involuntarily. The creature before him seemed completely oblivious to the impossibility of its own existence. "Please state your designation for the record," Myelgo said formally. "John Smith," the human replied, then grinned. "Though I've got to say, your translation software did a pretty good job with that. Usually takes people a few tries to get the thirth sound right." Myelgo's third eye focused on the data scrolling across his neural interface. 7 days in first contact protocols, more than triple the normal processing time. Yet here sat the human, seemingly unperturbed by anything, including the fact that he'd just emerged from a region of space that should have reduced his ancestors to gibbering primitives eons ago. "Mr. Smith," Myelgo began carefully, "there seems to be some confusion about your point of origin." The human leaned forward in his chair, a gesture that made Myelgo's defensive glands secrete a thin film of protective mucus. "I'm not sure what's confusing, Inspector. I showed you our coordinates. We're from Earth, 3rd planet from our sun, out in what you call the muddle." Myelgo's 3 eyes shifted to deep crimson. "That's precisely the problem, Mr. Smith. The region you claim as your home has been proven incompatible with sapient life. The muddle drives intelligent species to madness and self-destruction. We have documented evidence spanning millions of years." John Smith pulled out his complimentary Bobco datapad, scrolling through the information about the muddle with casual interest. "Ooh, that explains the 1960s, he muttered, then looked up with a shrug. "Listen, Inspector, maybe we're just built different?" The casual dismissal of galactic history made Myelgo's tentacles curl in frustration. "You don't understand. The Precursors, the most advanced civilization ever known, were destroyed by the muddle. Their minds simply broke. How could your species not only survive but achieve space travel?" "Well," John scratched his head, "we don't really rely on pure logic or intellect. Most of us operate on a mixture of instinct, emotion, and what we call winging it. Sometimes we make terrible decisions and then use our intellect to justify them afterward. Works pretty well for us, actually." Myelgo stared at the human, all 3 mouths slightly agape. The creature was describing a decision-making process that should have resulted in extinction within generations. Instead, here sat their representative, calmly discussing their species' apparent immunity to cosmic horror, as if commenting on the station's artificial weather. "Would you like to see our preliminary trade goods?" John asked, reaching for his bag. "We've got some interesting items you might—" "Oh, moment," Myelgo interrupted, his professional training barely keeping his voice steady. "You mentioned winging it. Could you elaborate on this concept?" John's face lit up with what the inspector's software identified as mischievous delight. "Oh, it's when you have no idea what you're doing but do it anyway. Sometimes it works out great, sometimes it's a complete disaster, but it's always interesting. Like this one time, on Jupiter's moons." Myelgo quickly decided he didn't want to hear the rest of that story. "You are granted provisional access to the station," he announced, perhaps a bit too hastily. "However, you will require a security escort at all times." "Great!" John jumped up with alarming enthusiasm. "Say, where can I get something to eat around here? The nutrient paste is kind of bland." Myelgo's third eye twitched. In a moment of what he would later recognize as spite, he recommended the Quantum Cuisine District, home to the most experimental and potentially lethal restaurants on the station. Surely, even a species from the muddle couldn't survive some of those establishments. As the human bounded out of his office, Myelgo began composing his retirement notice. He had a feeling things were about to get very interesting, and after 117 rotations, he was too old for interesting. The Quantum Cuisine District pulsed with bioluminescent signs, advertising delicacies from across the galaxies. Floating orbs of plasma contained writhing tentacles, while crystalline displays showcased dishes that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. The security escort, a hulking Vexthor named Carax, kept all four of its hands near its weapons as it followed the enthusiastic human. John Smith moved from stall to stall with the excitement of a child in a candy store. He stopped at a vendor selling what appeared to be living flames in bowls of liquid nitrogen. "What's this one?" he asked, pointing at a particularly violent-looking specimen. The vendor, a gaseous being contained within an environmental suit, pulsed with warning colors. "This is stellar essence, extracted from the corona of a dying sun. It burns at temperatures that would melt most species' digestive systems, not for consumption by carbon-based life forms." "I'll take two," John declared, already reaching for his credit chip. Carax's exoskeleton rattled in alarm. "Sir, perhaps we should find something more suitable for your physiology." But John had already grabbed a bowl. The security escort began composing its incident report in its head, preparing to explain how it had allowed a diplomatic visitor to self-immolate. Instead, John took a spoonful, made a thoughtful face and said, "Spicy. Reminds me of my aunt's chili. Could use some hot sauce, though." The vendor's gaseous form contracted in shock. The human trading fleet's arrival at Last Outpost station was, like everything else involving humans, an event that defied all conventional protocols. The ships themselves were a testament to humanity's unique approach to space travel. Each vessel bore modifications that made seasoned engineers question their sanity. Are they using a black hole as a coffee maker?" asked one of the station's technical analysts, squinting at the scans of the lead vessel. "Actually, it's an espresso machine," John Smith explained cheerfully. "Regular coffee makers don't work well in zero-G, so we had to get creative. Wait until you see what we did with the quantum foam stabilizers." The docking procedure alone caused 3 different safety AIs to request retirement. The human ships approached the station in what could only be described as an improvised dance formation, their captains communicating through a mixture of standard protocols and something they called vibing. The first ship to dock was the Dave's Not Here, captained by a woman named Sarah Chen, who immediately asked where she could find the strongest stuff in the house. She wasn't referring to drinks. Following close behind was the Hold My Beer, whose captain had somehow managed to domesticate a small piece of the void between stars and was keeping it as a pet. "His name is Spot," the captain explained to a horrified docking crew. "He eats quantum fluctuations and purrs in 5 dimensions. But it was the arrival of the 3 muddle species that truly sent the station into chaos. The Zix crystalline ships played what they called space jazz, a form of music that temporarily rearranged local reality. The quantum nomads' vessels seemed to exist in all possible configurations simultaneously until observed. And the Dreamweavers, well, no one was quite sure if their ships were actually there or if everyone was collectively imagining them. In the midst of this chaos, John Smith organized what he called a welcome party in the Quantum Cuisine District. The event featured human music, which caused several reality fluctuations, human food, which violated multiple laws of thermodynamics, and something called dance-offs that had the station's gravity generators working overtime. Vylora, the Marlith demon who had retreated from John earlier, returned with her entire clan, apparently fascinated by the species that treated existent threatening situations as entertainment opportunities. They were particularly impressed by the human concept of spicy food challenges. Carax, now promoted to Chief of Human Relations, a position created out of sheer necessity, watched as humans and their muddle-born allies transformed the station's carefully maintained order into what they called a proper party. "You know what this station needed," Sarah Chen said, sipping something that technically existed in negative space. "A little chaos. It was too predictable before." "Too predictable?" Kirax's exoskeleton rattled. "The station's systems are designed to maintain the stability of thousands of different species." "Exactly," she grinned. "But have you tried maintaining instability? Much more fun." Meanwhile, in a quiet corner of the station's furthest bar, Inspector Myogo sat with several other retired officials, all of them watching the feeds from the party. A human had just challenged a Dreamweaver to a reality-bending contest, while another was teaching the Zix how to break dance, a process that was literally breaking several laws of physics. And, "You know," Myelgo said, sipping his 7th nerve-calming solution, "maybe the muddle didn't drive species insane. Maybe it just needed species that were already a little insane to make it work." The others nodded sagely, ordered another round, and watched as humanity continued to rewrite the galaxy's definition of possible. Hey cosmic explorers, if you've been enjoying this wild ride through space, now would be a perfect time to smash that like button and hit subscribe. Don't forget to ring that notification bell. You won't want to miss what happens next in our galactic adventure. Drop a comment below with your favorite human chaos moment so far. Within weeks of the human fleet's arrival, Last Outpost station underwent changes that would have made its precursor builders question their life choices. The station's AI had to create an entirely new protocol classification, technically not a disaster, even though it looks like one. The engineering department was the first to crack. After the 7th time humans improved various systems by doing things that should have caused catastrophic failures, Chief Engineer Zedek Stahl submitted a new station manual titled "Just Let Them Do It," a guide to human engineering solutions. The manual's first page contained only one sentence. If a human says, "Trust me," evacuate the sector, but let them proceed. The station's architectural layout began to shift as well. Humans had an uncanny ability to find shortcuts through higher dimensions, leading to the creation of what they called scenic routes, passages that technically violated several laws of space-time but reduced commute times significantly. "Look," explained Sarah Chen to a group of bewildered station administrators, "if you just fold this corridor through the 5th dimension and add a small temporal loop, you can get from the residential sector to the trading hub in 3 minutes instead of 20. But that's not how space works," protested the station's chief architect, their crystalline form vibrating with distress. "Is now," Sarah grinned, stepping through what appeared to be a solid wall and emerging somehow in the station's central plaza. The Quantum Cuisine District underwent perhaps the most dramatic transformation. Humans introduced the concept of fusion cuisine to the galaxy, which in this case meant literally fusing different states of matter into edible forms. The resulting dishes existed in quantum superposition until consumed, leading to what humans called surprise flavor adventures and what everyone else called controlled chaos. Bax, now sporting a modified exoskeleton that could withstand human-style high fives, had to establish a new security protocol called the "Yeah, They Do That" directive. It mainly consisted of determining whether unusual events were A. actually dangerous, B. just humans being humans, C. both, but somehow working out anyway. The station's medical bay expanded to include a human activities ward, though surprisingly it treated more non-humans suffering from attempted participation in human activities than actual humans. The most common diagnosis was reality shock, followed by attempted to out-party a human. Even the station's commercial sector adapted. The first human-owned shop, Dave's Definitely Normal Earth Stuff, became an instant sensation. It sold items that other species couldn't quite understand but felt compelled to own, like lava lamps that contained actual stellar matter, and mood rings that somehow affected local probability fields. Perhaps the most significant change came in the form of the station's new emergency response system. The traditional threat level indicators were replaced with a scale ranging from localized human chaos to, okay, maybe stop them this time, to too late, just what? Valora and her Marilith clan opened what they called a fusion restaurant with humans, combining their traditional mate-consuming practices with human cooking techniques. Surprisingly, it became the station's most popular dating spot, though diners had to sign extensive waivers and bring their own quantum stabilizers. The Zix contributed by creating music rooms where reality could be safely rearranged through harmonics, while the Dreamweavers established meditation chambers that may or may not have actually existed. The quantum nomads, meanwhile, started a transportation service that got you to your destination before you left, though they couldn't guarantee which version of you would arrive. The galactic ripple effect spread through known space like a quantum wave of chaos, transforming everything it touched. News of humanity's existence and their casual defiance of universal constants reached even the most distant sectors of civilized space. The Galactic Council, a body that had maintained order for millennia, convened an emergency session that lasted 3 standard months. Their primary agenda: how to handle a species that treated the impossible as merely a suggestion. "They're doing what with black holes?" demanded the High Chancellor of the Regalian Confederation. "Using them as garbage disposals, apparently," replied the Arcturian delegate, their tentacles twitching in distress. "They call it ecological responsibility, something about reducing their carbon footprint across multiple dimensions." Reports flooded in from across the galaxy. A human merchant had introduced extreme sports to the gravity-sensitive Floatians, leading to the creation of what they called quantum surfing, riding gravitational waves through space-time. The sport was immediately banned, then legalized, then became the galaxy's fastest-growing entertainment phenomenon. The Xextolian Empire, known for their rigid adherence to logic and order, sent an observation team to study humans. The team returned 2 weeks later, half of them having opened jazz clubs, and the other half pursuing careers in what they called experimental cooking. Even the dreaded space pirates of the Crimson Nebula found themselves transformed by human influence. After a failed attempt to raid a human trading vessel, which ended in a party that lasted 3 days, they rebranded themselves as Adventure Tourism Specialists. "Look," explained the former pirate king, now CEO of Extreme Expeditions Unlimited, "humans showed us we were thinking too small. Why steal cargo when you can charge people to experience authentic space piracy, complete with souvenir t-shirts?" The Eldair, despite their initial psychic distress, discovered that human unpredictability enhanced their mental abilities. They established the first human Eldair Innovation Center, which produced inventions that worked perfectly despite violating several fundamental laws of physics. But perhaps the most profound change came from the steady stream of species emerging from the muddle, following humanity's example. Each brought their own unique blend of impossibility to the galaxy. The quantum nomads introduced probability tourism, the Dreamweavers established reality art galleries, and the Zix transformed space travel with their harmonic drive technology. The galaxy's scientific community faced an existential crisis. Centuries of established theories needed revision because humans kept doing things that should have been impossible. A new field of study emerged: human probability mechanics, or, as humans called it, hold my beer physics. In a quiet corner of the Andromeda Beach Resort, formerly the most secure retirement colony in known space, Inspector Myalgo sat under 3 suns, sipping what humans called a pina colada. The drink, like everything humans touched, shouldn't have been possible. It existed in a quantum state of both frozen and liquid until observed. Next to him, K-Rax, who had finally accepted early retirement after the Great Coffee Incident, watched a group of humans teaching young Zikis how to surf on waves of probability. "You know," Myelga mused, his 3 eyes slightly unfocused from the drink, "I've been thinking about the muddle." "Dangerous habit," Kial replied, his exoskeleton now decorated with what humans called Hawaiian patterns. "What if we had it wrong all along? What if the muddle wasn't driving species insane? What if it was waiting for species insane enough to handle it?" Before K-Rax could respond, their conversation was interrupted by a familiar voice. "Inspector, K-Rax, you won't believe what we just discovered." John Smith, now the official chief of Impossible Operations at Last Outpost Station, bounded over to their table. Behind him, reality rippled slightly, a common side effect of prolonged human presence. "We found more precursor ruins," John announced excitedly. "And get this, they left notes. Turns out they didn't go extinct because of the muddle. They just got bored with being logical all the time and went on what they called a cosmic road trip to find more interesting ways to exist. Myelgo's drink shifted from frozen to liquid and back again as he processed this information. Are you saying... Yep, John grinned. The Precursors basically became the first space hippies. They're out there somewhere, probably having the time of their lives. Want to help us find them? We're organizing an expedition. Sarah's bringing her pet black hole, and the Dreamweavers have some wild ideas about using quantum jazz to track consciousness patterns across dimensions. Carax and Myelgo exchanged looks. After a moment, Myelgo's three eyes shifted to a color that hadn't been seen before, the exact shade of why not in the electromagnetic spectrum. You know, Myelgo said, standing up somewhat unsteadily, I always wanted to write a book about my experiences with humans. I suppose I need more material. That's the spirit, John exclaimed. We leave in 3 days. Bring snacks and your sense of impossible. Things might get weird. As they watched John bound away to recruit more retired officials for his expedition, Carax turned to Myelgo. You realize this will probably end in either disaster or revolution. Knowing humans, Myelgo replied, finishing his drink. Probably both. And somehow, it will all work out perfectly. Somewhere in the distance, a human was teaching a group of Marilith demons how to do karaoke. The fabric of reality shuddered slightly, then adjusted itself to accommodate the impossibility, just as it had been doing since humanity emerged from the muddle. The galaxy would never be the same, and somehow that was exactly as it should be. Wow, what a journey through the cosmos that was. If you enjoyed this tale of humanity turning the galaxy upside down, don't forget to smash that like button and subscribe to our channel. Want to know what other cosmic adventures await? Hit that notification bell to stay updated on more stories from across the universe. Are you Team Human Chaos or Team Galactic Order? Let us know in the comments below. And hey, if you're wondering what happened to Inspector Myelgo and the gang on their precursor hunting expedition, or what other impossible things humans got up to, well, that might just be another story for another time. Remember to share this video with your fellow space enthusiasts. After all, chaos is more fun when shared. Until next time, keep exploring the impossible, and remember, in space, no one can hear you say, "Hold my beer."